Hello. Welcome back to the Hole in the World.
Hello. Hi.
I am your humble GM, Great Zamino, Zach, to the folks that know me, and I am joined once again by my lovely players. Starting to the right on my screen will be the lovely Gavriel, played by...
It's me, Marcy, aka Experimental Madness, across all social media platforms. I'm very excited to be back after missing our last session.
Yeah, a lot's happened, so we're going to be fun
Things that
catching
I
you
don't
up.
even know about, so
Oh,
this is going to be interesting.
oh yes. Also joining us, playing the wonderful recuperating Twig.
It is I, Hopper. um, yeah, which is I'm failed deadly on pretty much everything with instead of an E because I'm extra special.
Playing the earnest and congenial and sweet Maurice.
Hey everybody, I'm Bill, also known as Ghost Spike on Discord. Hi.
And then also finally joining us, playing the very intelligent and latest possessor of a new magical object, Kyrrie.
Hi everyone, I'm Marissa. I'm playing Kyrrie, and I'm on Critical Kitten on most social media.
Awesome. So, guys, we're really excited to be rejoining you. A lot has happened in the previous session. We were joined by our guest, Chris, who played the enigmatic Estain, a maker who had the ability to converse with everything. And some things actually occurred. Essentially, we had a grimoire was discovered and a conspiracy to steal it. A couple of people had been mind controlled. We also managed to discover that that gun that went off on the back of Twigg's head in the first episode resulted in an actual magical demon bullet being lodged in their brain. So, in the process of dislodging this bullet, Twig made some discoveries about their own past, and also managed to convince the bullet to be expelled along with the assistance of Estain, who took the bullet only to abscond from the Order of the Vancian campus with the bullet and with a what appears to be a rogue Peresaad agent by the name of Marlowe Anders. So, did I miss anything, guys?
That about covers it.
And so, in addition, one of the interesting things that happened last session was that Gav, you saw something mysterious and or kind of heard something mysterious, and you felt compelled to leave the party behind in a moment of crisis. And so, without further ado, we're going to pick up and flash back to that moment.
All right.
So, everyone is standing, offering a standing ovation for the demonstration of Jaro's fictive form. And in a span of a moment, your attention is caught by, first off, Maurice standing and uproariously applauding in time with the other Vances who are applauding Jaro's work. You also see, having spoken to Kyrrie, you see her shrink into her chair as if to kind of avoid the sight of someone else in the crowd. And the very next moment, you also see Twig sink and kind of faint and pass out into their chair. And that is when you hear something. And you hear something that reminds you of home. Not this home, the home you had before. What is it?
If it has to be something that would remind Gav from home immediately enough to like leave this situation, it's probably sounds like her mom singing in Yiddish.
You don't hear necessarily your mother's voice, but you do hear the sound of a language that sounds just like Yiddish, also being spoken by a woman's lilt. And not only that, but as your awareness, and I think the only reason you can actually hear this is because of the sensation that's been provided to you by your angelic host, that new benefit to your perception. It seems to almost zero in on that sound. It's almost, you feel like it's like happening on a different frequency. And not only that, you also get the sensation of smell invading your nostrils. Another smell that reminds you of home. What is it?
Wow. Probably like the stuff that my parents would make for me. Like fresh chicken coming out of the oven or hollow bread. Combination Shabbat dinner, essentially.
Yeah, it's starting to fill your nostrils, and I think that I would like you to make a perception roll.
Okay. What's the challenge rating on this?
This one's going to be fairly low. It's going to be a 4.
Okay. I'm not putting anything into that because that was a 9.
Excellent. So your angelic senses, yeah, so this is basically kind of a critical success in this case. Your angelic senses, they almost seem to lock your eyes for you to the entry to the reception area, where basically everybody is kind of expected to funnel out and, you know, partake of kind of reception hors d'oeuvres and also kind of talk about the demonstration. There seems to be this kind of strange quality to the light, and you realize it's almost as though, again, those angelic senses are perceiving something abnormal about this light. And because you rolled so high, I'm going to turn a card. This card is the Unknowable Truth. The raven stands watch over the unknown. As we strive for understanding, the closer we get to the truth, the farther away it becomes. We know this to be true, but only after we've made the journey. The truth we learn is that we cannot actually know the truth. At the very heart of the secrets family, the unknowable truth is the ultimate secret, the secret that cannot be, by its very nature, learned. But still we try anyway. It is futile, and yet it is productive. Even when you can climb an infinite mountain, you're still moving forward. And it strengthens the color of the indigo sun, the color of the sun that exemplifies truth. And you feel something is waiting for you beyond that door. You feel it is an ineffable truth inside you.
Well, I gotta go.
Yeah, and I believe at this point, that is when I think you start leading your way to towards the door, and Maurice stops you. Maurice, remind me, what do you say to her?
I have Twigg's arms in his unconscious body, and I have his arms and their arms, and I'm looking towards Gav. You know, please help. You know, grab the legs. We need to get them out of here.
And what do you say?
I think I'm like in a trance state, and I'm standing now, so I wasn't standing for that standing ovation. and I'm staring out towards where the sensations were hitting me. Sorry,
and Maurice,
I've got to go. And I'd start going.
And you can kind of hear, Gav, but it's like.
Hold on, I think we lost you there, Bill.
Like, I'm not even really aware that I'm here and everything that's happened.
Okay. So, as your feet carry you, as Maurice is calling after you, and it all kind of fades into the noise, into the background of this standing ovation, like so much static. And that's when you hear the voice in your head, the voices, I should say, an ethereal, speaking authoritatively, says,
"You must be careful. It could be a trap."
Still worth checking out. I don't feel like I have a lot of choice.
Very well.
It kind of feels like I'm moving through like water at this point, I'm gonna say.
Absolutely. It's exactly like that. That sensation of, fighting, not being fighting, but being part of a current, a tide, perhaps of magic itself. And you make your way to the doorway, and that glowing light. And I think that as you kind of make it to the doorway, there is that sound, almost like a chorus of Yiddish, as though you are just hearing so many people kind of talking all at once, very excitedly. And I think that at this point, however, you kind of peer your way, back, and basically you find out that you are essentially dealing with, you're looking out into the empty reception area. And it's empty except for two people. It's one man who is very kind of schlubby. It's kind of like looking at, you don't know who this is, but we do. Essentially, it looks like Clark Kent, but schlubbier, a little bit, more of a paunch with a receding hairline and thicker glasses. And he seems to be talking very kind of animatedly with a woman. And she has this red waistcoat with puffed out shoulders. She has long black curly hair, and her eyes are animating this kind of with this vivid green light as she's speaking to this person, and she's holding in her hand a box, and almost like smell lines from an animation or something like that. The magic and the that current and those sounds and those smells and those sensations are all seeming to be coming out of this box. And you look at her, and the thing that's most striking as she turns her head is that she seems to be wearing a circlet. And the circlet is basically, it resembles an 8-pointed star, and it is very similar to a Star of David.
With an extra point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's basically, it's the symbology of it is very reminiscent to you.
Huh. Okay.
And she seems to be having a animated discussion, and she all of a sudden closes the box, and that sensation slowly begins to fade away. And there's a huge smile on her face as she's having this conversation.
Can I hear what she's saying?
Do you get closer?
Yeah, you bet.
Okay. And she's talking about a visit And as you get closer, you hear that she is, talking with this character, this kind of schlubby man, saying, "Well, oh yes, I imagine. Isn't that wonderful? I think that he'll really appreciate the gift." And as you get closer, I think, how far away are you at this point?
If I'm coming out from the door into this reception chamber, it sounds like you said it was.
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably, I'm not gonna get too obviously close just yet, but close enough to do some like reconnaissance eavesdropping. If there's any pillars or obvious angles I kind of casually approach from,
Absolutely.
I'm gonna use a bit of my like natural sniper instincts to not get too close, but close enough to listen.
Excellent. So why don't you do me a favor and let us go ahead and why don't you roll me a stealth check?
Ooh, and the challenge for this one?
Let's say it's 7.
Oh shit. Okay. I'm gonna do it straight.
Okay.
I'm not gonna put anything to it.
Okay.
7.
Wow. Excellent. With a push. You
didn't even do anything to it.
Yeah, it's just them in this chamber, and I think immediately you get the sense of where their eyes would naturally fall as the ovation starts dying down, and you immediately duck behind kind of one of the tables where all the hors d'oeuvres are being kind of served out. And there are a number of lower degree Vances putting down platters, serving food, and there is just... I think that you just managed to very quickly do that. And, what are you doing now that you've kind of evaded detection?
I heard that this was a gift.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to be obvious because right now I kind of feel a little stupid. Like, is that trance state still in me or is it gone?
The moment the box closed, that kind of attraction you felt, it lingered a while, but it seems to have just kind of faded away. But
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think first and foremost, Gav feels confused as to how she got here.
Mm-hmm.
And doesn't remember what just happened.
Okay.
Like, I remember the sensation of why I was here, but it's the previous stuff, like Maurice yelling at me. I don't quite remember the last few minutes of what was happening in the hall before I came out here. Kind of feels like I'm waking up from a weird dream I had, and the sensation of what that box was giving me feels like the remnants that I'm remembering from waking up from a dream.
Okay. But I would say in this case, even coming out of this fugue, you understand what the box kind of was offering and what it was creating. And you do have that kind of perception of the woman.
Got it.
So what do you do?
I'm going to make my presence known here. Yeah, but non-threateningly.
Okay.
Like, did they take my weapons when I came in? Or do I still have my gun strapped to my back?
I think, oh wow, that's a good question.
I realized that I never asked that the last time.
You know what? Let's pull another card. And
Ooh.
we'll see whether or not that tells us.
Nerve-wracking at all.
All right.
Let the fates decide.
Seriously.
All right. This one is Lucky Coin.
Oh.
We put a lot of value in objects. We place a lot of importance in their presence in our lives. Some people might have a favorite shirt, a trusty handkerchief, or, of course, a lucky coin. Armed with a talisman such as this, no harm can befall us. But we only barely understand the truth of such things. The luck they bring, if they work, never comes in an expected form. So,
Does that mean I still have my gun?
Yeah, good fortune, wealth, freedom, unexpected luck, unstructured. So that's kind of the meanings. And it's, again, it's silver. Oh, this is perfect. So because it's silver, the color of the angelic sun, I think that you have working quickly and knowing
It's freaking me out.
exactly. I know, guys.
This is freaking me
Perfect.
The Sooth deck is not real magic. I promise. This is what Monty Cook told us. He could be lying.
This is the weirdest Sooth deck draw.
Disclaimer.
But as we so I think what happens is I think you know how to break down the rifle and do it in such a way that it quickly comes apart into separate pieces.
Oh yeah, you bet I know how to do that.
So you have your rifle and it's probably somewhere on your person. It's just kind of broken down.
Cool. So when Gav steps like fully into the hall, it doesn't look like she just has a massive sniper rifle strapped to her back, because that's totally non-threatening.
Exactly. She doesn't have
Right.
it. Yeah, but yeah, so I think that so you've broken it down. How would you like to make yourself known to this person?
With my usual grace and tact and charm and what the hell was that?
And
Oh boy.
You did say non-threatening, right?
That
The-
is non-threatening.
the
That's as non-threatening as I can be.
the two of them
Right? That's how it works.
That's such a terrible baseline. I just throw bricks at people, and I think that's a terrible baseline.
when you don't have
Kettle.
when you don't have Twig's subtlety, it's a problem.
Don't know what subtlety means.
When you literally do not have the subtlety of a brick to the face.
All right. So, what happens is these two figures turn almost comically slowly to you, and one of them, I think the man says, excuse me?
That box. That something happened. I came here. I saw there were things coming out of the box.
And at this point, I think the woman, she looks at you kind of curiously and kind of slightly tilting her head, and she looks at you and says, well yes, I apologize. I know that my memories might have an intoxicating feeling.
Your memories.
Well, yes.
That's not possible. They were close to my memories. That's why that's how I got here. I don't even know how I came here. I just heard it and I followed it. And who are you?
And she's a little taken aback, and I think this fellow kind of starts moving to step between the two of you, and at which point she puts a hand on his shoulder and she says, it's okay, Monday, let me handle this. And she says, well, yes, if they're close to your memories, that's certainly a strange thing, but of course, we live in Satyrine. There are many strange things about our city. How came you by these memories that are so similar to mine, if you don't mind my asking?
Things, yes, but
I'm sorry?
this doesn't make any sense to me.
Why?
I don't know why it tapped into my memories when you said that they were yours.
Well, these, I would say that perhaps there's something, I think that there's something that I'd like to maybe believe you, but you are not my kind.
I'm not anybody's kind. The only thing that I know about this place is that nobody is anybody's kind. But I heard my language come from that box.
Your language.
Yes.
Interesting. And she looks to her companion and she says, Monday, I'll be right back. And she says, do you mind walking with me out to terrace over here.
Very well.
And she begins kind of walking towards this open window that is, it's essentially, it opens out to look over the campus on the eastern side. And, you know, from this, you can kind of smell the night air. The indigo light has, you know, slowly faded and dropped to kind of a darker shade of deep blue, close to nightfall now, or close to complete pitch dark now. And she says, so you will have to apologize. I will have to apologize for my frankness, but you do not look like a pathwalker.
I don't even know what that is, so no, I'm not. I wouldn't say.
Huh. So you have to apologize, my caution. There are not many of my people left. The war...
Right.
The war took many of us. I believe that we were important to the efforts.
I don't really remember this war. I can't find any information on it either.
That is, I would assume, the design of the Deathless Triumvirate. I assume that in order to keep the peace, they used some sort of powerful enchantment to wipe it from our minds, that we might not be divided by who was friend and who was foe. At least that is what I ascertain personally.
And that's what most people here tell me. I've only been in this city for a year, and I have no memory of what I did beforehand. I hear that's very rare for memories not to return this long.
Well, tell me what you know. What do you... You don't remember anything?
I know nothing of this city. As far as I am concerned, I would like this to be nothing more than some sort of psychotic break. A bad dream brought on by my own war.
You know, the last person I'd, you're the only person I've talked to who would have preferred to have had a psychotic break, as opposed to, well, anything else.
I don't know you, so you have to forgive me for not wanting to divulge every single one of my own secrets to a stranger.
And you will have to
Especially
forgive...
one who...
You will have to forgive me for not wanting to do the same. It's just that it's very rare that I meet somebody who is familiar with my language.
Was this too? Zach, I just asked, is that true?
Yeah, she replies in Yiddish, yes, it's true.
Oh, you're not going to try to go for the accent, Zach?
No, I am not going to butcher that and make...
Where were you, what they call in the shadow?
I never went to the shadow.
How is this then your language? That doesn't make sense. Nobody here speaks this.
I've spoken it all my life. I learned it from my parents who taught me and whose grandparents taught them.
I think I'm now, like, I can't speak great Yiddish. So I'm just going to tell all of our viewers right now that Gav has definitely code switched into entirely speaking Yiddish at this point.
Oh, absolutely.
How many people speak our language here in Satyrine?
Well, I hesitate to say how many of there are, but there are not many anymore.
Almost everyone that I've encountered has told me to let go of things from the shadow, move on, find out what I was here, what I used to do here, who my family is. And you're telling me now that my language that I learned in shadow is a real language here.
Well, yes.
Why wouldn't someone have said that to me?
I could not tell you.
Why did they lie to me?
I don't know if they lied to you or you just didn't know.
Isn't their whole purpose for like the rehabilitation into reality is to find some sort of thread that
Well,
connects you to this world?
well, yes, but
Then why wouldn't they have shared this information with me?
maybe they did not know how. You're asking me to divine some sense from strangers.
You'll forgive me, but you're the first person I've been able to converse with in my own language for a year. Who is playing my music from a box in a room I just happen to be in. There's a lot of coincidences, and I don't really believe in them.
Well, coincidences are merely an everyday occurrence in Satyrine. Do you think that it's any coincidence that there are as many secret hearts as there are suns in the world? Do you think that it is a coincidence that 8 is a magical number? That 13 is the number of mortality, but 17 is an even more powerful number?
I don't pretend to understand the inner workings of how magic tends to flow in this city was
And
a soldier. That's really all I know.
you will have to forgive me that that curiosity, that magic, is part of my people. I would hazard to say our people, but... And she points down to your halo in the center of your chest. But this is not our way. Do you mind? And she is kind of got her open hand, up, kind of stopped. But she's asking, essentially with her body language, if she can touch the halo.
All right, but try anything, and I warn you.
And at which point, you hear Athariel inside you.
This is insane. Don't.
And before any more protests, erupt from your host, she reaches in and she pulls the halo out of it, and it shimmers.
How does that feel? Do you feel anything at all?
It feels kind of like your heart's leaping in your chest.
Oh, whew.
And I think what happens is it leaps momentarily, and it begins to pulse, and you finally see that it is pulsing with the equivalent of your heartbeat.
Oh my god.
And she's holding it in her hands, and then she lets go, and the halo back into your chest.
Okay. That was not the most pleasant of sensations.
I apologize. It's the first time I've ever seen such a modification or change.
I didn't make this change. I woke up here with it inside of me. I can't really do much with it. It's just there.
Fascinating.
None of this. I didn't have this before.
And at this point, you are starting to hear the filtering voices echoing from kind of beyond the terrace, of people filtering into the reception area. The sound of excited voices, chatting, the clattering of plates from dishes as hors d'oeuvres are being served. And she says, "So, I came here to impart this gift to Jauro, but I feel perhaps that we should spend some more time talking."
I agree. I still don't understand any of this. But you're the first person that I've spoken with that feels real.
What is your name, if you don't mind my asking?
Gavriel Glinsky.
And she raises her hand. She says, Yulia. Yulia Metzger.
It is a pleasure to meet you,
And
Yulia.
her hand clasps over yours, and her second hand gently rests atop yours.
Oof.
And there's something when you touch her, is you see, it's almost like the touch amplifies your perception of her as you see into the space around her, and you see basically lining one arm are these golden sigils that shine out from under her coat sleeve. With your angelic perception, you easily see them. It's almost hard to look at how bright they are. And they are sigils. And you recognize them as being sigils denoting each of the suns. There are 6 on her arm.
I'm guessing, and when I say I am saying Gab, that these are places she has been to. I don't need an answer to that because I didn't say it out loud.
Yeah, what do you observe this, or do you want to, what do you do with this kind of knowledge of what these are?
Oh, I want to hold on to that one for now. I don't think I want to ask that question yet.
Okay.
She mentioned
for everybody else, what sons are not represented?
The suns that are not represented are, I believe they are the invisible sun, and I believe the indigo sun.
So everything except for something that's very hard to tattoo, and
well,
and the place we're actively in.
Well, you say it's hard to tattoo, but the fun thing about this, actually, it's would be the invisible sun. No, it would be, I believe it would be the golden sun and the golden sun and the indigo sun. So the golden, yeah. So for
the golden,
yeah, the golden sun and the indigo sun.
Okay. Interesting.
yeah, boy.
Also, there is definitely also missing anything of kind of denoting an invisible sun, and the invisible sun, as hard as it might be to tattoo, has a sigil associated with it. Even being in here a year, you would understand what the path of suns looks like.
Yeah, probably. Where are you based, if you don't mind my asking? I don't have anyone to tell any secrets to, don't worry.
And there's a smile that crosses her lips as she takes a card out that shimmers with this golden script on a kind of a white background. And the white background itself, as you look at it, it seems to move almost the way stratus clouds move. And you realize that the card itself seems to be made of cloud stuff.
That's dope.
And she hands it to you, and she says, "Wherever the suns take me." And it has been a pleasure to meet you, Gavriel Glinsky.
You as well.
I look forward to our next conversation and perhaps more private environs. And she's
Yes.
saying all of this in Yiddish, so.
Yeah, no, I don't think I've stopped speaking in Yiddish.
Mm-hmm. And I think at this point, her friend, who, her schlubby friend, is kind of like looking out towards the terrace at her and kind of nods, and she nods back to him. Says, so I must rejoin my friend, and I will be just... If you wish to get in touch, you should talk to my friend. And she points to this gentleman. He's good for at least one day of the week. And she nods and takes her leave.
That's certainly a phrase.
Mm-hmm. I think
Well,
there's kind of like a lack of translation there.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go over to Mondeo. Was his name?
Monday.
And Monday, and ask, how do I get in touch with your companion?
And he looks at you and he studies you a little bit. And there's this kind of weak, kind of tepid kind of smile that crosses his face, kind of like halfway between a smile and a grimace. And kind of like says, well, you just think of me on my day, and I'll find you.
I see. Well, I will do so.
And I think at this point, he does kind of a curt nod, and you can see the kind of crown of his bald spot. And he rejoins Yulia, who is talking to an animated Jaro, who is basically glad-handing everybody who's kind of congratulating him on his good work. And at that point, not too long after, maybe a few seconds, a set of these kind of uniformed people that have been all around the audience, kind of like the chamber of the proscenium.
Mm-hmm.
They, two pairs of them walk up to Jaro, and Jaro, who is still this kind of magnificent 8-foot tall Amazonian figure, Atla, she bends down, or he bends down rather, to listen and kind of excuses himself to accompany these two pairs of uniform figures. And they seem to rejoin at one end of the reception area a very kind of severe looking woman who's wearing a similar uniform to them. And her hair is kind of done up in a bow. Not in a bow, rather in a kind of a pigtail braid. Not a pigtail braid, a ponytail braid. There we go.
We got there.
There you go. We got it there together.
We know what hair does.
Yeah, but you are left alone in the reception area. As
I think I think Gav kind of takes a moment to process what the fuck just happened. And as kind of reality trickles back down, she's just like, oh shit. And realizes that she's left everyone, and wants to immediately kind of beeline it back to where she left.
Okay. And so where do you head to?
I mean, back into the audience hall, or the atrium, the assembly hall, to find out where they went
Yeah, everybody's kind of I think that everybody is really kind of looking it's looking like the audience hall is pretty much the assembly hall is pretty much emptied, except for a couple of those uniformed members of the Order of the Vance. There are a couple of them that are kind of, just very gently waving Lacune and Eldebrin and other vislae out the doors. What do you do?
I'm just looking around for like Maurice and Twig.
They are.
I am like not there.
They are nowhere to be seen.
Fuck. Yeah, man, I'm just gonna have to do my best to try and find them.
Okay. I would like you to go ahead and make a search roll. I believe you can use perception for this, right?
Okay.
So basically, if you have any additional skills for perception, or you want to, actually, yeah, I think this would actually qualify as your Eyes of the Angels ability.
Isn't that passive?
Yeah, and it's not. It's passive in that it's added extra bene to your pool.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's always my perception pool is already quite high.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and make it a perception roll. You would get bonuses if you had anything in like searching.
Okay. Challenge rating?
Let's make it.
Am I supposed to always ask that, or should I be rolling without?
No. You should always be asking it because it reminds me to set one.
Hey.
Let's make it a 7.
Ooh. I will add 1 perception into that.
Okay.
Bring it down to a 6. 5.
Oh, okay.
Make it. It was bound to happen at some point.
Yeah, so you start kind of looking all over and you are weaving through people being served hors d'oeuvres, and you are kind of trying your best to kind of make your way around.
Yep.
And basically, you are kind of like lost. I mean, you are a good searcher. You are a good reconnaissance artist, so to speak, or reconnaissance woman. And at the same time, the hardest part of this is just you do not know anything at all about the Order of the Vance. You don't know anything about the Vancian campus. This is the first time you've ever set here. It is, for lack of a better word, hostile ground or hostile territory. So you kind of get lost, at which point, and I'd say this takes maybe 10, 15 minutes. You do probably sense a bit of a commotion. And I think that you follow this this character who's kind of clad all in this kind of black formal-ish, it's almost like a suit. It's more like kind of like it's almost like a tabard with this kind of black undershirt, and he seems to be kind of darting out towards the front door. But you kind of have to get lost in like the crowd a little bit, and as your kind of eyes are following, you feel 2 sets of hands on each of your shoulders.
I'm gonna whirl around immediately.
There are 2 of those uniformed Vances looking at you, saying, excuse me, would you please accompany us?
What? Why?
We have some questions we'd like to ask you and your friends.
I'm sorry, I'm clearly not here with anybody. I am talking.
We did see you with several of your friends in the audience.
Fuck.
And, or at least, and they say, well, at least Alinea did. Would you please accompany us?
I don't know who that is.
You will.
If I say no.
I don't think I heard that, Marcy.
I said if I say no.
Well, we would say that we'd stop you, but really we don't have to. The wards are in place for anybody who is hostile to the order
I never said I was hostile to the order. You said please, and I might be.
If you would please come with us, we wouldn't have to activate the wards.
Very well. I'll acquiesce to this request.
And they start taking you out of doors with them.
Oh boy.
At which point we're going to cut to Kyrrie.
Mm-hmm.
You are standing triumphantly with the Grimoire as you turn to see a familiar face staring at you. One Alinea, who says, "You should probably come with me."
Now, to be clear, we still have that anonymous mark going strong.
You do.
Okay.
And at which point, and thank you for reminding me, Maurice. At which point she says, "Oh, hold on." And she sticks her thumb in her mouth, and she puts her thumb to your forehead, and she wipes away the mark.
That easy, huh? I mean, she is special ops, so
Yeah.
I guess they teach them some tricks of the trade. Right. So am I aware instantly that I have become myself again, visible?
I don't think, unless you looked in a mirror or kind of like had that set, I don't think it's really necessarily like a sense. It's how people react to you. And I think that in this case, what she does is she says, "Oh, there, that's better. If you'll come with me, Postulant Hollingsworth, Vance Hollingsworth."
And I visibly relax. It's like a huge weight has been lifted off my shoulders. I go, "Oh, Alinea, thank God. Yes, of course. Will you be telling me what this is all about?" And I clutch the book a little tighter to my chest.
Yes. Absolutely.
Lovely.
That
Please,
said,
lead on.
we are going to also need to collect your friends.
Oh, you mean those people?
The
ones that were in the hall with me?
Yes. The ones that I believe left the hall. And I think it's right about this time that, in similar fashion to Gavriel, Twigg, where were you hiding again? Twigg?
You just froze a little bit there, Haas.
Oh, pardon me. Yeah, sorry guys, we're having a little bit of bandwidth issues, I bet. But Twigg, where did you hide yourself? Where did you run to after the chaos of last session?
I feel like it was a bush. Or like some shrubbery? Or like a toad.
When in doubt.
I mean, there are many shrubbery on the campus of the Vance.
Many shrubbery? Okay.
Many shrubbery.
Yeah, I think...
I shall bring one.
Yeah. And yeah, also similarly, weren't you also in a shrubbery, Maurice? I think...
I don't recall. I think the way I ended last session was I had like helped myself to some hors d'oeuvres.
Oh my god, the cheese.
Yeah,
the cheese
absolutely.
tasted like success.
The cheese bandit.
I was on my way out the door, but I had not.
The taste of tenure.
Tenure. That tasted like tenure.
Taste of tenure. Wow. gotta give me some of that.
Oh yeah, that's right. Oh, that was so
Tenure
great.
cheese.
So
when you have to remember the bullshit you came up with, Zach.
it's surreal, and it just leaves my mind like water through a sieve. So
That's why I have Bill.
So yeah, I think at this point, Twigg, there are a couple of members of those that uniformed set of Vances, the Peresaad, that arrive and say, could we please have you come with us. I don't imagine, one of them just looks at you and says, I don't imagine that's comfortable.
I've slept in worse.
I'm sure you have. Would you please come?
I'm gonna stand up and then throw up a little bit on their shoe.
Oh,
Just to, like, say it, like, it's just kind of like,
You hear the breath just being like snarled out of this person's teeth.
Yes.
I'm just gonna pull an unnecessarily long cut up t-shirt, like rag.
Uh-huh.
So it's just like cut up in such a way that's very inconvenient out of this a pocket that should be far too small for that. I'm gonna wipe that up real fast and like hope they don't notice that was ink.
And yeah, I think I think it's the kind of t-shirt that's so dirty that it actually, when you use it to clean up things, it actually makes things dirtier. Is it that kind of situation? Yeah.
Yeah, it's very much like it. And it's just like the way it was cut was in like, it's just, I don't know, somehow a yard of fucking cloth. And it's got like grease and grime and blood and random bits of moss. And I'm just like, cool. Nothing to see here. I'm just gonna polish your shoes now.
And
that's not weird at all.
And there's like a little smudge gets left on the cloth.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, and you are pulled gently but firmly to your feet and are escorted back towards the way you came, although kind of veering off a little bit further to the east of campus. Maurice, you are enjoying tenure cheese. It's absolutely delicious.
The minute we get a merch store, we have to make
tenure
some
cheese.
shirts.
Yeah, and it is being accompanied with a fine Cabernet or Sauvignon Blanc that tastes very much like of smug satisfaction, with notes of with notes of philosophical superiority. And
and Maurice definitely feels like he just got one over on the Peresaad agents,
mm-hmm.
And made a fine distraction for Twigg's escape.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just and Duncan's at his feet, kind of nibbling at what's been dropped by everybody.
Yeah, and at which point you feel a set of hands on your shoulder, and one of those Peresaad agents is looking at you, says, "Excuse me, sir, if you would accompany us." And this Peresaad agent, she looks to her kind of this in the air just beyond you, towards where your other shoulder is, but instead on his knees is another Peresaad agent petting Duncan, going, "Who's a good boy? Who's a good boy? You are." And at which point she says, "Ahem, Duncan, Travis, focus." And he says, "Oh," and kind of gets back up and firmly places a hand on your shoulder.
I love that the sensation of there's a dog somewhere in here is a universal one.
Yes.
If we ever make a movie out of this, we have to get Eddie McKinnon to play him.
Yeah, and Maurice, do you do anything with these two Peresaad agents breathing
Maurice
down your neck?
gives a tiny little belch and says, "Where do we go?"
We will be bringing you to our representative of. Well, she'll tell you, and
Down the line.
Yep, and
Let's go
this way, and they begin. Not like frog marching you, just kind of like gently but firmly accompanying you out of the hall.
Maurice tries to make small talk. So, where are you from?
And I think one of them, I think the lady that was the all like business kind of ignores you. While Travis is kind of like, "Oh, well, my family's from outside Lower Traverswood. And she looks at him and says, "Travis." And And
Travis is my fave. Travis is my fave new NPC.
and he just keeps, and they both keep walking you east of the Memorial Lecture Hall, the Orod and Zamra, the Orod Memorial Lecture Hall.
Wonderful architecture. Don't you think so?
Yeah, again, just no response. And it's at this point that all four of you kind of see each other off in the distance being led and flanked by other Peresaad agents. And you are heading towards this large structure. It's actually it's absolutely fairly daunting in its size. And Kyrrie, you know that what this is the long this is basically the Zamra Memorial Seclusium Residence and Administrative Offices. It is called the Long Night with a KN because the way it's structured resembles a knight and who has fallen with sword in hand. The way that the kind of like layout of the hall itself is. It's very strange. It was essentially kind of built on by successive supreme maguses of the Telemeric Court.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how foreboding is this building?
Kyrrie, why don't you answer that?
Well, I'd probably say it's a solid 8.5 if you've never seen it before.
Oh yeah,
It
absolutely.
bodes ill, you might say.
Well,
Lots of 4 in that boding.
much more.
Much more very
Yes.
bode wow.
Yes. Thank you.
Why are we like this?
I appreciate it.
How? So we're being frog marched? Like what? In what? How securely?
Well, you
'Cause
can always try.
I'm not cool with this. This is not cool.
Same
Being
disease.
Yeah, you guys.
marched to a fucking.
As soon as Maurice sees everyone else, his good mood evaporates and his hands onto the floor.
Well, I mean, you can try to make a break for it.
Let's see here. Sorry, I have to see what my mad skills are yet. And then, okay,
Ooh.
yeah, I think I'm gonna do at least a half-hearted attempt to like just kind of duck and run.
Okay. I would like you, because their hands are on you. I would like you to make a dodge defense to see if you can evade their grasp. We're going to set the difficulty at a 5.
Okay, and because I have a 1, I need to roll a.
Yeah, you need to roll at least a 4 unless you spend a bene.
That would be movement.
Yes, that would be movement.
Movement bene.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'll probably do that.
Okay.
No, I probably won't do that. Shiny new Dragon Con dice.
Uh-huh.
Hell yeah, hell yeah.
All right. Don't
Okay.
be a dick. 7.
Okay. So you break away and you begin running across the quadrangle.
Can I say that as I see Twigg making a break for it, something flashes in Gav's eye and I cast Colliginous Raptor over your escape, which obscures your movement. So specifically from this spell is I conjure a shadow mist, form of a giant bird of prey, that swoops down and obscures sight in a small area. I can cause the raptor to move anywhere in long range each round, and this is not an action.
All right.
But I can cover your escape, my dude.
What level?
Apostate life.
What level is that
I
spell?
saw that you made that is a level 2. So I will burn 2 of my sorcery points to cast it.
Okay. So
I think my feather hair kind of flares up and my eye almost goes a little bit bird-like as the glint in it shifts. I don't even think Gav's aware she's aware she's trying to do something. I think for her, because she doesn't understand spell work, it kind of looks more like, yeah, somebody made a break for it. I wish I could kind of help cover that escape route, and then it just happens.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll say that this goes off. I think that what we'll do is, I think that, so it's funny that you do that.
And by funny that you do that, do you fuck you and fucking my plot?
No. It's funny because the issue is I really like this. I like it, but mechanically it's going to be hard for you.
If I can't apparate in and out of Hogwarts, you can just say that the spell failed.
No, you know what I want? I'll tell you what. I want you to add the level of that spell to a resist roll.
All right, I already have a natural resistant.
Actually, that is for Twigg.
Oh.
Twigg, I'd like you to make a resist roll, add, and if you want to spend an extra sorcery, Bene, to up the level of that spell, Gav, you can.
Since I'm not sure she's really aware she's doing it, I think it manifested out of her will from
Okay.
I gotta help a comrade cover their escape, because I know when I'm about to be interrogated by enemy forces here. I think it just happened.
Okay. So
question. I do after my little trip, my field trip into the woods of my own brain, I do have the Spellbreaker ability.
All right. Tell me what that does.
I can turn my ability to counterspell into a passive defense using no action, though I must still be aware of an incoming effect. Would that have any? That's the thing that I don't know what's happening. So read
the text of your counterspell for me.
As an action, we can cast a counterspell that unravels and dispels one active ongoing spell or magical effect that is level 1 or level 2.
Okay.
The cost for the blah 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 blah.
So here's,
and then I can do that as a passive defense. And yeah.
So you know what? Because I really want this to see where this goes, I will give you 2, and I will add for your passive defense, I will give you another 2 to your venture. You are going to need to break a 10. So I'll
put a Bene into that.
Okay.
Hell yeah.
So if you get I'll say if you get a 5 or above, you manage to evade the wards of this place.
Fuck. That's a 2.
All right. So essentially, you feel, like, oh gosh, I'm gonna make it. And you have the sensation of running, and then your muscles freezing in place mid-stride. And
rude.
Yeah, at which point you're like, I'm not gonna make it. And you fall to the grass of the quadrangle mid-stride, and it kind of cushions your fall. So it doesn't actually seem to hurt. And it's almost like you feel like your body is sinking into the grass as though it were a trampoline. At which point, the 2 Peresaad that you broke away from come back, and they pick you up. They literally, one picks you up by your outstretched leg, and the other person kind of puts their arms behind an outstretched arm in the back of your head.
Am I paralyzed?
You are paralyzed.
Fun.
Maurice would like to.
I swear at them. I swear at them with my eyes.
Maurice would like to
look
what?
At all of the Peresaad agents. Are any of them the same ones that he just saw when he was with Twigg?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thomas and Isabella are still there.
And Marlowe.
Marlowe
is
Marlowe is gone. You have no.
And same with Estain is also not among them because he was not a Peresaad agent.
Right. Estain is no longer there.
Got it. Estain, excuse me.
Yeah. Or Estain, rather. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, you don't recognize any of these people. What do you do, Maurice?
I keep this knowledge to myself.
Okay. And so you guys are walked through the Seclusium, and you are walking through the halls, and you come to these giant double doors that are the entry to the hall, and they are adorned in the invisible tongue, an inscription that says, "All ye who would seek knowledge and the love of spellcraft, enter here." And so the doors open as if expecting you, and you walk through them. And as you're kind of walking through, you enter this kind of ante-hall where on either side are these large floating candles that are about the size of a human forearm, and as thick. And the flame that comes out of these candles is similarly blue, tinted, you realize, indigo, almost to match the natural light of the sun above you. And as you're walking, the hall opens up into this kind of massive, into the head of the knight, so to speak. Basically, where this, gorget would be of the knight's armor, is this kind of massive entry hall over which is an oculus. And the oculus looks up into the night sky above you. And you can tell that when the indigo sun is in perfect alignment, it's an absolutely gorgeous view. But as it is dark, all that you see above you are winking starlight. And they continue walking you towards the heart of the night. And you find yourself going up several flights of spiral stairs. And there are two that basically make up two of the valves of the night. And you start hearing very earnest discussion. All four of you. Twigg, at this point, your limbs are no longer frozen. You are righted in place, and you are kind of gently being pushed up the stairs, at which point one of the Peresaad agents says, "Don't do that again."
Did my raptor get dispelled?
It didn't get dispelled.
Then there's a little shadow raptor that shrunk in size that's perched on my shoulder, and I have no idea how it got there.
And oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. So because it's not posing a threat to anyone, it was not dispelled. But as you're kind of ascending the valves of the heart, you hear the sound of earnest discussion, and there is someone shouting. And as you're walking up the stairs, you see a small line of people outside what looks to be a very large kind of a fish's entryway, with the door slightly cracked open as it's being pulled shut, with some snatches of conversation coming outside of the doors. But the thing that is most striking is the person that's being walked out is Giles. And Giles is walking with his head down, and you see him being accompanied by a Peresaad agent, but also an older woman who, taking a look at the resemblance between the two of them, you realize is his mother.
Oh, poor boy.
And
wait, Giles or the Peresaad agents?
Very funny.
Giles.
No, I heard that weird.
Yeah, the Peresaad like to keep it all in the family. No, the Giles's mother is by his side, and as he's walking past you, you see him kind of like, kind of like look up to see who's approaching, and he sees you, Kyrrie, and he does a double take, and his jaw drops a little bit, and he and his mom begin to hurry down the stairs, at which point the Peresaad agent is like, whoa, wait, hold on, and kind of quickly matches pace. And outside of the hall, you also see Allegra.
Ooh.
Oh boy.
You see Allegra, and at which point Alinea and the other Peresaad agents kind of, join what look to be at least 3 other agents outside the doorway. And as you are, as that door was closing, the snatches of conversation, some of them angry, you hear that snatch of conversation essentially going, what was it? Of course the Court of Nous would have to be behind something, and then the door closes.
Hmm.
And Allegra meets your gaze, and her already in deep grimace intensifies. What do you all do?
I have no idea what's going on.
So I think up until this point, Kyrrie had been feeling quite excited and joyful and relieved. She met someone she knew after being in a situation that she felt, she was totally out of her depth in. She felt protected. She felt among friends. She knew the Peresaad were going to help. She admired the show of magic, which kept Twigg in line earlier, I think. When, earlier Maurice had said, oh, we can't control Gav, we can't control Twigg, we don't, they're going to be able to run amok among your campus, which I think had been bothering Kyrrie and worrying her. Even marching through, this very familiar building where she had been a number of times, I think it recalled memories. I imagine in that Oculus room, they have sun-gazing parties for the students when that sun does really align over that Oculus, and people bring tenure cheese and superiority wine and have little picnics on the floor of the administration building. So she's just sort of flooded with this deep feeling of familiarity and safety and comfort. And then, of course, she sees Gil being marched past her with his mother, and of course that only intensifies the joy, right? She feels, man, next time I see him, he's never going to hear the end of it. He had to call his mommy because, he felt so shaken, this arrogant, idiot of a PhD bro. So she's just on top of the world until the second that she meets Alinea, she meets her sister's gaze. And the second that Allegra looks at her, and the second she knows Allegra has seen her, it's just like that all falls apart.
Yeah.
And I don't know who I'm walking closest to, or whether or not, we're walking past her, or the intent is to join her. But I do try to see who the nearest person is, and I kind of put myself behind them, or, almost as though I need a shield or someone to protect me from that stare.
Absolutely. In this case, does anybody volunteer to be closest to Kyrrie?
I can be.
Okay. So, Gav, your thoughts already kind of possessed with what has kind of transpired in your version of the night. You actually make the connection very quickly. You see there is this woman outside of the hall who looks like a almost like a doppelganger of Kyrrie, only maybe a decade older. There is some gray in her hair. She kind of like resembles like an older Zooey Deschanel, and at the same time, peeking out under a wave of dark graying hair is what looks to be a patch of angry pink scar tissue on her left temple. And I'm going to determine her state of mind. I'm going to turn another card.
Yay.
Question.
Yes, sir.
Is there any way we could take a very brief break
Yeah, we can do that momentarily.
in the soonish history?
Yeah, so we're going to I'm gonna reveal this card, and we are going to do a quick break in just a moment.
So Twigg doesn't die.
Confusion, mistakes, change in identity. This is the misremembered dream. Dreams are strange constructs of our subconscious, made stranger still because we don't remember them clearly. Some say that in shadow, people's dreams seem strange because they're remembering the actuality, and in the actuality, people's dreams resemble the mundanity of the gray. This is, at least in part, true, but of course, like have anything having to do with the deepest reaches of the mind, it's much more complex than that. The line between memory and dream is already tenuous, but the memory of a dream, or the dream of a memory, who can count on that? So, it's not necessarily a bad card turn, but I think what happens is there's this sense of confusion in that I think it almost kind of coincides with that mirror dream that you had, before all of this started. You have this moment, and I think it might even be some of that residual magic that's has to do with the anonymous mark that's kind of pulled off of you, and you look at Allegra, and it feels like you are looking through a cracked mirror at yourself. And at which point she kind of curtly nods at you and says, "Sister." And that's where we're going to take a break. So guys, we're taking a break now around 5:57, 5:58. We will be back at 6:05. So in the meantime, everybody, take a break, grab some something to drink or eat, make a sandwich, and we will resume shortly.
Woohoo.
Hey guys, welcome back to the second half of The Hole in the World, and a live stream of an original story set in The Invisible Sun by Monty Cook Games. I, once again, am your GM, Zach, otherwise known as @GreatSamino. Where we were previously, we had been seen our heroes essentially kind of apprehended by the Peresaad, and we had also encountered several people that were involved in a lot of the goings-on and the conspiracy of last session, where Yeleska's Grimoire had been almost stolen until that person was stopped by Kyrrie. And not only that, but speaking of which, she has just encountered her older sister, Allegra, in the reception hall outside of what appears to be a very large administrative office, where the Telemeric Court makes their residence on the Vancian campus. In addition to that, Gavriel encountered a pathwalker named Yulia, and we rejoin our heroes as and set the scene as we kind of resume the action. And Allegra looks at you, Kyrrie, and says, "Sister," and kind of looks at you expectantly.
What happens in Kyrrie's brain is a bit hard to describe. I think it's sort of a knot of different emotions that have all just been tied and coiled and amalgamated together, that there isn't a clear winner. There's fear, clearly. There's anger, a lot of anger. There's caution. Not really happiness. I would say that one's missing. But all in all, it's just such a muddy mess that there isn't a clear answer. All Kyrrie knows is that she's feeling all of these things and she wants to run, she wants to scream, she wants to be anywhere but there. But that's not what comes out. That's not what anyone around her sees. What everyone around her sees is almost a mirror, like that cracked mirror that you mentioned earlier. Image of Allegra's own behavior. Kyrrie sort of stands up a little straighter, almost as if she's steeled herself, and she says, "Greetings, sister. To what do I owe this inimitable pleasure?"
Well, and she looks at the grimoire that is still in your arms. And she says, "Oh, I imagine I'm here to be involved in another mess." And she looks at the grimoire.
Whatever would give you that impression?
Well, I see that your court has already tried to involve my associates in some supposed theft. You wouldn't have to know anything about that.
A theft? Certainly I did no thieving. This is a book that belongs to the library system of the campus.
And so, was it your recommendation that the Court of Nous, my friends, be brought before your court? I can't help but see a coincidence here.
Kyrrie's not actually sure where this reaction is coming from in terms of her own response to her sister, because, like I said, she is feeling the complete opposite of the things that are coming out of her mouth. But things that are coming out of her mouth are almost like they'd been rehearsed, or like there was a pattern to what she was saying, or something that she couldn't control that just sort of flipped on like a switch when she sees Allegra. This is the kind of way that she communicates with her. So Kyrrie's very baffled. She's taken aback, but again, all of that very internal. She telegraphs, though, surprise, and that so much is genuine. I did not involve your court. Why ever would you think that? Do you know something that I don't?
Yes, your court has endeavored to involve us.
On what grounds?
On the grounds that we are some grand conspirators trying to make off with knowledge, as though it should be protected, secluded in this dank library. This is not a library, it's a crypt. All ideas will be free.
And do you think that freedom comes from you?
I only know what I've seen, sister. And what little I've seen of you librarians has left me wanting.
And so you believe there should be a code, rules to govern the possession of knowledge?
Only,
is that your answer?
Only insofar as they make it available to the rightful owners of those ideas. The Court of Nous, the deeps of dream and sleep, the people in the blue sun. This is all of our rightful property. And you also, she's talking very authoritatively about the Court of Nous as though she's a member, but she's still very much corporeal. She's still very much, from what you can see, still an esteemed member of the Vance. The other Peresaad that are nearby are kind of blanching. They're all kind of like a little uncomfortable around her because she still has that authority of being a 4th degree Vance. But it's clear she just has an utter disdain for the institution.
Right.
And yeah, also, everybody, you guys are seeing somebody who looks almost exactly like Kyrrie, just basically watching the two of them spar verbally. What are you guys thinking?
Oh, Gav is so confused right now. There's a grimoire, you have a sister, interesting political conversation, but I have no idea why I'm here.
There's something about multiple courts, one of them being the court of Noas, but it's also like watching somebody fight with their siblings is one of the most awkward things.
Maurice probably has the most context, probably at least knew of Allegra from his past relationship with Kyrrie. But he's focusing on the mention of Allegra's ownership of the blue and sleep, and has pegged her as possibly a foe and a danger to Twigg.
Interesting. And I think it's in this kind of state of detente that is when Alinea, having quietly stepped into the door beyond where that administrative office is, returns outside and says, "We'd like to see the four of you now." And Allegra nods at you and says, "Good luck to you and your rabble."
I'm sure I'll be seeing you again soon.
And she rolls her eyes. And you walk through this administrative office, and it is a massive, very kind of ostentatious room. And sitting on this lengthy table, Kyrrie, you immediately recognized 6 figures of varying ages and countenances, huddled around a 7th figure who is at the center of the table. And one of them you recognize as Jaro, and you realize very quickly that you are looking at the Telemeric Court. All 7 members, and including the Supreme Magus, who is situated directly in the center. And Alinea is standing off to the side. The 4 of you, the other 3 of you, you're taking a look up, and you see these, book mages. They are very clearly Vances by the way they are dressed. They all seem to have a badge, a silver medallion of office around each of their necks. As does Alinea, although hers is somewhat different. And Alinea announces you as you come in, and all around you on the walls are the busts of previous Supreme Maguses, starting on either side, with Zamra and Orad. 2 of the busts, essentially, of the faces of the Vancian statues that you saw outside of the Orad Memorial Lecture Hall. And Alinea looks and says, "So, your honors, I brought before you today the woman who currently holds the Grimoire of Yuleska. And one of these women on the court just very vociferously says, 'Oh, thank God, thank Vislae herself that we still have the Grimoire.' And Jaro says, 'I told you, Ota, there was no reason to fear, and we would have detected it if it had left the grounds.' And Ota immediately looks back at him and says, 'Quiet. You've done enough to me.' And at which point the central figure, who is standing in a silver chair, the legs of which look like human legs, says, 'Quiet, the 2 of you. One at a time. Alinea, if you would be so kind as to ask your questions.' And Alinea steps forward and says, 'As a representative of the Veshtaad, I am here to do a formal inquest into how this grimoire came to leave its shelf. Can each of you tell me your names for posterity?' And she looks expectantly at each of you.
I think probably I go first, given that this is very common knowledge and procedure to me how these sorts of things go. Although, despite the calm demeanor or the familiarity with this sort of proceeding and process, Kyrrie's hand is visibly shaking her side. This is clearly something she's never actually done before. She's never been called before the Telemeric Court, and these are people that she's always held in great esteem, and they're the heads of her family, for lack of a better word. They're really the heads of her institution that has formed the entire life that she's led. So she again sort of girds herself, but steps forward, head held high. She says, Postulant Gavriel von Hollingsworth, First Assistant Librarian of the Order of the Vance.
And Alinea nods and says, Postulant. And you, sir? And she looks to Maurice.
Maurice kind of looks around at everybody, and he's feeling good, actually, that this seems to be an inquiry about a book that he knows nothing about, and feels the truth shall set them all free. And Maurice says, Maurice Webb, I'm a second degree greeter at the Hadassah.
This one is lying slightly. I don't think he realized it, and that's what Alinea said.
Okay. About what?
You are, I think you are actually a first degree weaver.
Oh, I just forgot. I got promoted like last week.
Yes. Well, okay, pardon me.
So
We'll retcon that one.
I was lying.
Oh yeah, you were. Okay, you were lying. So, yeah. Okay.
But I wouldn't lie to you. But like I did just lie. But
and at which point, Ota, the woman on the left-hand side of the council, says, "I would recommend that none of you lie. Alinea has a special talent for sussing that out."
Sorry.
And she nods a little bit embarrassedly, and then looks to Gavriel.
Gavriel Glinsky, currently very confused.
And a smile crosses her face as she says, "This one's telling the truth." And then finally she looks to Twigg.
I just stare back, maintain eye contact.
We already have some information about this one from Thomas and Isabella, who were so kind to furnish us with this information. I assume that you are the one called Twigg?
And Maurice interrupts and says, and thank you both, Thomas and Isabel, for your help. Twigg was poorly, and we really appreciate their help, especially removing the I guess the bullet.
What?
And
this is all news. All news.
Yeah, at which point she says, "This one's sincere, as is this one. Yes, the circumstances were unique. It's our understanding that you were seen by an agent of the Peresaad named Marlowe Anvers."
Yes, and a tattooed fellow. Forget his name.
You don't... Well, do you actually forget his name?
Maurice does forget his name.
Okay. Oh, well, interesting. So you had no connection to Marlowe Anvers before this evening?
No, I'm pretty good remembering faces.
Does that track for each one of you? And she looks expectantly.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
And she looks to Twigg. And at which point, seeing you give the finger to her, she says, "If you are truthful, you have nothing to fear."
Sure.
Postulant.
And I go back to like just casually, like,
Maurice is trying desperately not to find this funny, and it's not working.
Gavriel absolutely finds this funny.
Kyrrie is quite embarrassed, but
Hmm.
holds her head high anyway.
Yeah. At which point she says, "Postulant, did you know Marlowe Anvers?"
I did not until this evening. I had seen him around the campus, as I have many advances, but I'd never had any direct interaction with him.
And at which point Alinea nods and says thank you. And she addresses the rest of the court and says, "I can't speak for the one at the end here, but they were..."
Zach's connection gets
What now?
Could you repeat that?
Yeah.
Said at which point, and then you froze for us just
Oh,
a little
pardon.
bit.
Yeah. I think at which point Alinea points back to the Telemeric Court and says, "I can't speak for this one on the end. However, this one was mostly unconscious during the time of the attempted theft. So I will assume there is no connection for now, but the rest are telling the truth."
Does
And
that mean we can leave?
and she looks expectantly to the Telemeric Court. And Ota says, "I told you it has to be something to do with the Court of Noes. Why isn't Count Solemn in here now, along with the Allegra, that liaison, or whatever she is?" And then Jaro says, "Ota, please, just..." And then she says, "No, Jaro, you endangered us all with your stupid demonstration. You needed this many Peresaad agents in order to what? Capture the public's attention?" At which point, the Supreme Magus in the center, this woman who seems wizened and bald, with her head covered with symbolic tattoos, all of them seem to light up as she knocks her hand against the table at which everybody is sitting and says, "Enough!" Your friends, if they are indeed such things, may leave for now. We reserve the right to additional questioning, but Postulant, you will stay.
Maurice kind of takes his cap off, bows, and collects his wards. It's like, okay, let's go.
Oh, Gav knows there's some weird setup here, but doesn't know enough about how the Vance works to really get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, what do you do? Do you say anything?
No, that's for everybody.
One more time.
Yeah, one more time, Marcy. We didn't get that one.
No,
I didn't get what you said, so I stopped.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry guys. I tend to get in and out. Do you say anything because you have that reservation?
Yeah, I think I'll be heading out the door and kind of stop and turn around and be like, "All of this over a single book? Don't you have a whole library?"
And
Seems a lot.
and Alinea says, "All knowledge is precious, but some is dangerous."
I don't like these people.
I would actually.
The minute I hear that, the hackles go up.
So, who was it precisely that was Alinea that said, "You, whatever you are free to go, except you, Postulant, are going to stay here"?
Yeah.
I would like to.
Oh no, it was the Grand Magus, I think.
Mhm.
Was that the Grand Magus?
No, that was Alinea. Yeah, no,
Okay.
that was the Grand Magus. The Supreme Magus said, "You may go. Postulant, you stay here."
I would like to sense motive.
Absolutely. She is very difficult to read. You're going to need a 12.
Whew.
Yeah, Grand Magus is. Don't mess with them.
Oh
So I have a
God.
+2 to sense motive.
Mm-hmm.
And would this be an interaction or an intellect?
That would be
Say
interaction.
intellect.
Yeah.
Fuck. Yeah, whatever. I'm still gonna spend a bene on that. So I need a 9.
Yeah.
Godspeed.
That's statistically unlikely. Yep. No fucking way.
What'd you got?
Is it a 9?
It's an I can't actually.
All right. All right. Hold
It's
on.
a 9.
Guys, bear with us. I'm sorry for your motion sickness. What? Awesome.
That's some apostate shit.
Yeah.
That is,
up.
guys, that is single-handedly the most clutch roll anybody could make in this game so far. That is brilliant. I will tell you this.
Dragon Con dice, yeah.
I would like you.
Amazing.
I would like you to. I would like you to take one joy as I'm going to implement a DM shift.
Ooh.
You are taking a look at her face, and you are trying to read it. This wizened woman, and you have the strong sense that you have met this woman before, or you have yet to meet her. It's a strange feeling. You feel unstuck from time. And in each moment that you look at her, you realize that there is this kind of beneficence attached to her, this kind of concern, as she says to you, there is a hole in the world, and we must find how deep it goes. And it's just like a flash, almost like a deja vu moment. And immediately you find yourself back, and you couldn't tell, was she younger? Was she older? It's hard for you to say, hard for you to pinpoint. It's a lot like when you touched those trees in your mind forest.
That's a brand new sentence.
Yeah. I figured you'd appreciate Mind Forest as opposed to Mind Palace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I dig it. I dig it a lot.
Yeah.
Also gonna drink for the name of the stream.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you said it. You said the thing.
Yeah, I was like, title card.
So, you're furnished with this knowledge. What do you think? What do you do?
I'm just gonna blurt that shit out.
And
I'm just gonna I feel like I was stopping to kind of go, and then I had just turned. Twig just turned and looked, and was and just kind of like, because I've met Kyrrie just very recently, so I don't have like the necessarily a depth of loyalty, but that doesn't mean I want to leave somebody somewhere where they are in a bad place. That's not Twig's style.
yeah.
And so I turn and I look, and I have that moment, that kind of disembodied flash of insight and vision, and I'll just full on right into the Supreme Magus's eyes and just go, "What's the hole in the world?"
And
oh, now Gav is stopped at the door because like something happened there.
and she looks at you a little taken aback, as if she has heard something she hasn't heard in a long time. And Alinea, there's a pause, a moment. And Alinea looks and says, Supreme Magus? And she kind of snaps out of it. That will be all for the three of you. Postulant, remain here. And she points to the Peresaad, and they begin ushering you out of the chamber.
Before you go, I think Kyrrie sort of looks a question at you, Twig. Almost confused, but reassured in a way.
Just make that, like, I make a motion like that. Like, I don't think, like, It's supportive but confused. I emanate support and confusion,
Yep.
which is basically me all the time in real life.
Okay.
I think Kyrrie has just perceived that whatever just happened, though, it shook the whole, the top of her order. None of them expected that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it even kind of caught the Telemeric Court kind of looking towards her. They're very disarmed. And then the moment she says, she brings everybody's attention back. It's business back to usual. I think it's almost like people are starting to pretend that they didn't hear anything. And it's just you in the chamber with the Telemeric Court and Alinea. And Alinea begins and says, could you tell us how you came into possession of the Grimoire of Yuleska?
Kyrrie nods, clears her throat a bit. Yes. I spotted, I suppose he's now a postulant, Gilles carrying the grimoire out of the library. And I happened to be in the library myself and heard him depart with it. I did not witness its being taken, but I did see him leave the library with it.
And what did
That being said, so I followed him. As you know, my duty is to the library and to the knowledge that is housed within the library, and this did not seem to be something that was right. Not only did he break all protocol for checking out any material to leave the library, I do know a particular piece of knowledge to be something which is housed under many a spell and guard, such that you would not be able to walk out without the assistance of a librarian who would be unlocking a number of specific locks and spells that would prevent this very specific thing from happening. So of course I followed. And I followed covertly. He did not know I did this following. He took the grimoire to Lastra's lab of practical magical application. He made to move to go into it. Only then did he find the door locked, and it was as though that broke some sort of trance. And I should say here with my testimony that much as I am known to have very conflicted feelings about postulant Gilles, he did not seem to be doing this of his own accord. It seemed, when I spoke to him after, that the last thing he recalled was having been in the audience chamber, watching the demonstration of Jaro, and Kyrrie gestures to Jaro become Atla. It was as though no time had passed for him. As soon as that door was found to be locked, he seemed appalled and startled at what he was doing with this grimoire, and he didn't know the first thing about how to explain how he got it or why or where, and in fact was glad to give it to me. And that is how I came into possession of the grimoire.
And at which point the Ota looks to you and says, looks to Alinea and says, is this all true? And Alinea looks to her and nods. And Alinea looks back to you. What happened after you secured the grimoire from Gilles?
Well, using general deduction and logic, I ascertained that something wasn't right. I couldn't put my finger on what it was, but my duty is to the book. And so I had a brief commune with the grimoire, and I asked for its consent for me to be its guardian.
All of the eyes raise, all the eyebrows are raised among the court as you say this. And at which point, and Alinea's similarly, and she says, and what did the book say?
Well, I mean, I only had a chance to have a very brief conversation with it. But I asked.
There are gasps as you say that you had a conversation.
Kyrrie seems surprised by this because it's, rare for her to have a conversation with a book, but she has done it on occasion in the library. So, she sort of thought this is standard kind of protocol. This is not something that should elicit admiration or surprise by anyone on the Telemeric Court. Goodness knows.
At which point, like Alinea says, and what did it say? And just almost like more urgently.
Well, I asked who last read it, and it confirmed that it was indeed Zaleska. So whoever was trying to get into the book or wanted it for a specific reason did not succeed in opening it. And that much I can confirm a great deal of certainty.
And there are murmurs now. Everybody is just kind of like talking once again, and then again, the Supreme Magus wraps her fist on the table. And Alinea composes herself and says, "And did you encounter Marlowe Anvers at any point during this evening?"
I did. And he tried to take the Grimoire, but was not successful.
And again, there's kind of these slight murmurs. And then, Postulant, have you ever found yourself tied to an organization known as the Church of Midnight?
Kyrrie thinks about it for a second. Analyzing her memories, going back, what does she know about the Church of Midnight?
I'd say you would understand that these are people that are they are kind of almost like dastardly overt kind of villains. They kind of bill themselves as opposition, and oftentimes whispered among the Peresaad. You would be privy to this knowledge.
Okay.
Sometimes they're akin to kind of like terrorists. But at the same time, what's very strange about them is some of their organizations seems to be some of their practices seem to be in opposition to this aim. But this is kind of like the general idea that you have. Your kind of perception of them is cloudy.
Okay. So I say I know of them, who they are as an organization and what they do, but I have never had any dealings, nor would I want to.
And everybody, all of the Telemeric Court looks expectantly, and Alinea nods. Have you ever had any ties to an organization called the Vespertine? And you have never heard of the Vespertine.
It's an interesting word, but I've never heard of it.
And again, nods, exchanges of nods. Have you ever heard of an individual known as Jiren the Devoured?
And do I?
Did you? You were outside of the logbook room, so you probably would not have gathered this info. No, that... No.
No, I haven't heard that name.
And finally, have you ever had any dealings with the Court of Nois?
Only indirectly.
How so?
As someone this court may know, my older sister is Allegra, the liaison to the Court of Nois. She and I have had many a disagreement over their approach to knowledge, what they believe about ideas and ownership. But that is my only connection. I do not have any affiliation with them myself.
And again, they nod and there's an exchange. And there's this kind of quiet murmur. And Jaro almost is kind of like studying you as the other people murmur and talk. And finally, the Supreme Magus sounds off and says, "Thank you so much for your time, Postulant. We ask that you please rejoin your friends in the hall. We will be keeping you separate in a waiting room while we deliberate."
Quick question. Did I know Esthane's name? Did I ever hear his name?
No, unless you were attending to Twigg, you would not have heard Esthane's name.
No, and I wasn't there, so...
Okay.
I will say there was another man that you should know about who was with Marla when they disappeared. He was a part of the attack and tried to get the Grimoire, but he used some sort of, I don't know how he disappeared off of the campus, but to protect the book, I threw up Norham's Sea of Words, and I was not able to see how, but I do know both were hostile.
And everybody nods and says, well, thank you all. That will be all postulant. And as you are being ushered out by the Peresaad, Alinea sidles up to you while walking you out, kind of like in a more formal gesture. And then she kind of leans over and whispers in, quick thinking, good work. And she opens the door and ushers you out. And you guys find yourselves together in a waiting area, at which point the Peresaad, one of them basically steps into the room with you, says, we're just going to have you wait here for a while the council deliberates. We ask that you make no attempt to leave until the council concludes this matter. I leave you to your own devices. And opens the door, and you get the feeling that there's probably a presence of them, several of them, because he meets the gaze of another Peresaad member as he leaves the chamber and then closes the door. And
yeah, that immediately like sets off bells for Gav. Normally when you're told when the matter's concluded you can leave, like, she doesn't trust like that.
Yeah.
So I think Gav is looking for the easiest escape route if that comes to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maurice is trying to kind of calm down the room a bit, seeing some agitation, saying, so we were told we could leave the questioning, not the whole thing. So I mean, we're gonna wait. They're deliberating, right? I mean, this is it'll be.
You guys see some.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, you see something strange on Kyrrie's face. She isn't, her face is actually quite smooth, glass-like composed, but she's very clearly crying.
Do you still have the book?
Oh yeah, it hasn't left your grasp.
Yes.
So Maurice kind of walks over and doesn't quite put the arm around, but is a comforting kind of presence and says, are you okay?
Kyrrie jumps. Why do you ask?
Just everything that's happening right now, just based on everything.
Yes, we are proceeding through the due process. This is the inquest that we would want a part of. They're trying to figure out what's happening.
What's happening?
What is happening? Like, entirely, what is happening?
Kyrrie turns to Maurice. Maurice, I wasn't there when Twigg was revived. That man, that doctor. What did he was part of the party that disappeared, the ones who tried to take my book. This book.
Oh,
who was he? Did he ever say his name?
At some point, I don't remember. But they were helping us. They helped Twigg. And I look at Twigg. I was like, they saved you. They took it out of you.
Took what?
Did what?
Took what out of him? Kyrrie's very focused now.
Them.
Well, it was. I mean, it was a bullet, but it wasn't like a regular bullet. It was bright silver. Glow. It had some writing on it. I mean, I wanted to take a closer look at it, but Twigg was still unconscious, and I thought that was actually our best chance to leave. So we did.
Kyrrie puts a hand on Maurice's shoulder, looking at him very intently. Maurice, what happened to the silver bullet?
The tattooed man took it. Gav, where were you? This wouldn't have happened if you. And Maurice kind of walks off and kind of paces around the room.
Silver
Look,
bullet,
this has
huh?
been a very strange day already. There's people here that are suddenly speaking my language and telling me that it's from here. And that happened, and they enchanted me out of the room. So I have no idea what's going on. And now there's a silver bullet, and now there's a book, and now there's an inquest.
Wait, your
Inquest on the-
language? What language is that?
Yiddish. Heard of it?
Of
You
course,
heard-
I'm a linguist. Yes, I can.
Yiddish in Satyrine?
I don't understand very little of this world, as you know, but there was a sudden pull, like I couldn't resist or I couldn't do anything but follow the sound of someone singing in my language. And there was like moving through a dream coming out of this box.
Kyrrie makes a sudden connection. You say a sudden pull, something you couldn't control.
I don't even really remember leaving the room.
Convenient.
No.
It's true. Do you think I understand any of this? I didn't do it because I like to just be led about. When have I ever done something because I needed to?
Gav, what you just described sounds very much like what Giels described to me when he took this grimoire, and Kyrrie holds it up as though it's almost like a prop. He can't remember. He said he was pulled out of that room by something he couldn't control, and the next thing he knew, he was outside that place about to goodness knows what do with this book. Do you think there might be some connection?
I don't know. This woman didn't seem malicious.
Did you get a name?
Yes. Yulia Metzger.
Liam.
Does
That's
that mean anything to you?
Would I have known that name?
It does not. Actually, you know what? Why don't you make me an intellect roll?
Okay.
I'm going to say that this is difficulty
That's a J name.
8. Yeah.
A what?
That's a J name.
What does that mean?
Which indexes did I nom?
That was T.
What was it?
Was it
It's
T?
Yulia Metzger.
Yulia with a Y, right?
Yeah, exactly, with a Y.
Would it have
Yeah.
been indexed by first name? I think was
Yeah,
the question.
unfortunately, yeah, this doesn't track with what you know. You
Alas.
yeah, not from what you've eaten anyway. So
Okay.
I was gonna say, let's go
So-
ahead and say the challenge is 7.
All right. So I get 1 special skill level if anything have to do with understanding or identifying bits of information.
Mhm.
And then I have a second skill with searching.
Cool.
I imagine, as far as I know, she has nothing to do with magical lore. So that's a 2.
Uh-huh.
And then I'll go ahead and add an intellect bene as well. So that'll be bringing it down to 4.
Absolutely.
6.
All right.
Hell yeah.
So you have heard of Yulia Metzger, but only in passing and only through scholarship. Essentially, Yulia, has been cited as a reference on traveling the path of the suns. Basically, it's almost kind of like, you know how, field biologists kind of go out and they, tend to immerse themselves in wildlife and habitats, that sort of thing. She's listed as in a similar fashion for traveling between the suns. So a lot of her work takes her all around the world of the invisible sun. So you've heard, you've read, and I think this is probably not necessarily your
Field.
yeah, you're not your field of interest, so you kind of probably didn't read with great detail, but you understand the gist of what she was writing. And I think she had been, you'd seen some writings about wildlife in the green sun. You had also seen about really more kind of particular granular information about navigating the blue sun, that sort of thing. And so yeah, you just know as kind of like almost like a subject matter expert.
Okay. That name, I think I've indexed her in the library. She's written information about traveling between the suns. In fact, I might have briefly cited her in a paper of mine once. She's a scholar. Was she here this evening?
Yes, I mean, she had the box. She seemed surprised when I was talking to her when I announced myself, but what could I have done? It was the first time I had heard someone speak in my own language. And by the way, odd that no one at this acclimation center would have told me that someone could communicate with me in a language that might help me adjust to my new situation.
Are you blaming me on this? How would I? That's news to me as well. You expect us to know everything? We don't know everything.
Isn't the whole point to try to make the passage through actuality easier as it can be?
To help you with your memories, to get them back.
So why wouldn't somebody have told me that my language is here?
We didn't know. This is news to me. Why are you looking to me like I have the ability to solve this? Why don't you just ask Kyrrie? And what the hell is that book?
Kyrrie almost is taken aback with. So she reverts to what exactly she told the council. She goes, well, this is Zaleska's Grimoire. It's a very important piece of scholarship. It's knowledge. We actually don't know what's in it.
Well, and how does this help us with Twigg?
During that statement, Twigg is gonna kind of talk, and I'm just gonna reach out and boop.
You're gonna boop the snoot on the grimoire?
On the
oh no, we're never leaving.
Is there a way I could like resist?
So
out of his path.
So
we just go to PvP.
So
somehow.
So I am actually going to give. All right. This is going to be. This is going to be a point of despair.
For moi.
For toi.
For toi.
You reach out to touch the pages of the grimoire, and it's like this. You know how have you ever accidentally touched an electric fence?
I've done it on purpose too.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So you reach out, and there is this malicious current that arcs out of the book into your hand, and I need you to make a resist roll. Difficulty 10.
Fuck me.
Mm-hmm.
Which is probably what I'm about to say in game.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool. I just didn't do the thing. Nice. I'm smart. Would that what bene would that be?
What do you mean? What name?
What bene?
Oh, that would be. I
Sortilege.
believe it's a physicality bene.
Physicality.
Yeah.
I have one of those. Let's see if I can roll a 9 twice in a row.
Uh-huh.
That seems statistic. That is a 5.
All right. So you reach out to touch the book, and some level of kind of protection arcs out from it, and you feel your arm go completely numb at the shoulder, and it just sinks below to your leg, useless.
And Marie, Jesus, Twigg, for 1 second.
I just look at the book. I look at the book and I just go, fucking rude.
I yank the book immediately back. I'm like, oi, what your hands, Logavor?
Maurice grabs you by the shoulders, like, are you okay?
Me?
Yeah.
Meanwhile,
I'm just gonna wave my.
while he does that, I'm looking at the book, almost stroking the spine a little, inspecting it, making sure the binding's held up.
Excellent. So the spine, nothing is untouched. Also, I want to say, hey, raid the roll. Thanks for the raid. Or roll the roll, not raid the roll. So yeah, basically, so the book itself is immaculate. There's this kind of shimmer around some of the locks that adorn the grimoire, but it seems to kind of smooth. And you notice that your touch doesn't seem to disturb it in any way, and it's probably because you're not trying to force it open.
I say to the book very briefly, he didn't know. I don't think he meant it.
But yes.
Why exactly have we been all individually taken for the sake of this one book?
Well, like I said, we actually don't know what information is contained in this grimoire, but we do know that it's what's the word I want? If I was going to use a piece of shadow terminology, it's cipher. It's protected, and the only one who was able to do that kind of, I think, cipher or security measure was Zaleska herself. It's the ultimate puzzle that I think no Vance has ever been able to crack.
Who is Zaleska?
It doesn't matter if we can't connect this to Twigg. We're losing sight here. We're here because Kyrrie got in her own trouble. No offense, Kyrrie.
I didn't get in my own trouble.
Okay, and Twigg, you're not the focus. At least not now. At least not anymore. And that's good. We have to. And what was it that you said to the Grand Magus? The hole? What hole?
A hole in the worlds.
What does that mean?
I don't know. But I have a memory or not memory. I think I've met her before.
That's impossible.
This place is so full of lies everywhere.
And there
Met
is
her before.
There is the sound of and you see Alinea waiting for you at the entryway. So, I'd like to let you know about the court's decision. We find it is not necessary to bring you in for further review, but I am here to answer any questions that are within my purview to provide. And I, of course, am here to just assess your safety and to make sure that you are all in condition to leave, should you wish.
Define condition.
Nope, don't find anything. We're good. Okay, good to leave.
Kyrrie looks at everyone and says, "We can trust Alinea. She's my neighbor.
Yes.
She has our interests at heart."
Gav is smiling, just like completely like, oh, sweet summer child.
Yeah.
Your neighbor is not a good enough reason.
So, I believe that after some deliberation, the Telemeric Court has determined that you were not responsible for the theft of the grimoire. There are clearly several other forces at work, and we appreciate your cooperation thus far. I am a representative of a force known as the Veshtaad. We are a counterpart to the Peresaad. We are essentially field librarians. And
that sounds like a really convoluted way of saying secret police.
Did you say that in character?
Yeah.
Yeah, then Gav is also like, yep.
Except wait, you don't understand the ways of our order. Peresaad are secret police, but the Veshtaad are not. I can say that as a librarian.
So, Peresaad are the more public face of our order. The Veshtaad are really more in charge of venturing out into the field and securing specific knowledge. But
Stealing it.
Censoring it.
Apostate high five.
It would be more about research than it would be about the Court of the News, which you've heard about earlier. That they believe that all knowledge is owned. The Vances do not believe that.
So, I think it's important that you understand the creation of the Peresaad. We were founded on the bones of Orod himself. Our co-founders, Zamra and Orod, were close rivals and eventually close friends and colleagues. And at one point, they, in endeavors to further the advancement of the Vancian order and to further understand the magic that we so eagerly employ, Zamra managed in a experiment to expand her size to roughly 50-60 feet, becoming a giant. In the process, she lost her mind and began attacking any obstacles in front of her, much of which was represented in Fartown. Zamra sacrificed herself in some degree, her sanity, but Orod sacrificed his life to bring her back from the precipice of madness. And that is why we founded the Peresaad, to combat the potentially catastrophic side effects of wildly unrestricted magical practice. They are essentially a disaster first responder force when it comes to magical practice throughout Satyrine. The Veshtaad are the proactive component of the Peresaad. We seek out people who would use sacred magical knowledge as a weapon or a means of causing chaos. This is by necessity. A great deal of magic, while all magic is precious, all knowledge is precious, and it is safe in many hands, some magical knowledge is dangerous in any hands, even in those of a child, especially those in a child. And so
this is why you're looking for Marlowe, isn't it?
Yes, and that is much as I can say to a non-member of our order.
Sensing motive on that bullshit.
Absolutely.
Samesies.
Yeah, so go ahead and give me your sense motive challenge 7. If you want
So I
to
get
assist
5.
somebody, you can add 1 to somebody else's venture. Yeah.
I don't have sense motive as a skill.
Mm-hmm.
I have,
maybe
I have 2.
Yeah, I'll assist you then, I guess.
All right,
So I need a 4.
Mm-hmm. Or better.
That's a 4.
Okay.
Heyo.
She seems very sincere. She is earnestly trying to. It feels like she feels like this is all. It's like she's talking to somebody and trying to reassure you this was all a misunderstanding. It's kind of like that same vibe.
Okay, I'm not gonna comment. Like I exchanged meaningful glances with Gavriel,
Yeah.
but that's the extent of my response.
Kyrrie's gonna look at Alinea and say, to someone within the member of your order, how was Marlowe able to become Peresaad if he's clearly not a part of our order, and clearly not someone who, or clearly someone who had his own agenda.
Well, that is a matter of hubris, I'm afraid. Our order is not immune to corruption, and we have done some preliminary guesswork, so to speak, investigation. I knew that somebody had infiltrated the Peresaad, but I had assumed that it could have been a rogue spirit possessing one of our order, perhaps somebody wearing a deceased Peresaad member, somebody, a shapeshifter. There are many ways that one can infiltrate any organization in Satyrine, but it is especially hard for Vance's to be the Order of the Vance to be infiltrated, especially the Peresaad, because of the wards around the campus. So,
And who do you think he really is?
I think that he is one of ours, and I think that he has defected to, if not a rival organization, then one terrifying in its potential.
Care to elaborate on that? Seems quite a bit of fuss for a single grimoire.
The Grimoire is considered one of the most powerful objects, potentially, within the possession of the Vance. It was encrypted by Zaleska, and so we can only guess at its meaning or its power.
So if no one can really use it, why is it such a danger?
Because the sheer fact is that those encryptive wards set up around the book, they are no guarantee of it remaining closed forever. And just because we cannot unencrypt it or break its locks does not necessarily mean that it is unbreakable.
So,
And no offense to Kyrrie, but how come you're leaving it with her? Shouldn't you lock it up somewhere?
And she seems to make a decision. I've been asked by the Supreme Magus to keep an eye on all of you and to be somewhat of a resource. And in that way, I mean that I can tell you some information, but not everything about our order and about this. But I can say authoritatively that the Grimoire has never spoken to another Vance. And the fact that it had a conversation and assented to guardianship by Kyrrie means that we are outside of a realm of known quantity. This is uncharted territory for all of us.
Kyrrie hugs the grimoire a little bit closer to us, and she said, so the Grand Magus is not going to make me break my word.
No, we understand that the grimoire is best served by guardianship by a Vance. We can offer some measures of additional protection while you are on campus, but if you travel with the grimoire, then we just have to caution that you
We're
and
targets.
she's wrestling with this kind of this confession that she's about to make, and she says, if it were up to me, you would not travel with this book. It is far too precious. I would ask that you seal it away or keep it somewhere in the depths of the library, but it has chosen you. And insofar as perhaps we could bond you to it, but at the same time, people who looked for this grimoire, others will follow, perhaps worse than Marlowe.
so we're a convenient bait.
And
to suss out your enemies.
she seems to she looks at the floor when you say that.
Yeah. I'm gonna take that as a yes.
This is not.
Kyrrie, you, it's chosen you to protect it. Make the choice to lock it up somewhere. That still works, right?
And
I can't. I gave it my word, Maury. If I
never
lock it
gave
up,
to mine.
well, I only speak for myself. If this is all too much for the three of you, you owe me. But I owe this book.
Seems we're stuck together no matter what any of us else think.
Alinea, when Marlo was with the tattooed man, the doctor, he took something. He took a bullet. Is the court talking about this? Does this mean anything to you?
well,
Speaking of which, does the name Mother Gun mean something?
Mother Gun. And she's trying to kind of field your questions one at a time. So, it's too much coincidence. While coincidence is common in Satyrine, in magic, in the paths and of the suns, this strikes us as perhaps part of Marlowe's plan. We can't be certain, but we believe that the bullet was a gambit. A way to perhaps, and there are some things that allow people to see through the eyes of other vislae, or to control their movements. Gilles found out of such a stratagem in a most unfortunate way, but thankfully he will be fine. I would hazard a guess that that was perhaps the intent, but I cannot say with any certainty. As to Mother Gun, the investigator in me believes that this Mother Gun is perhaps obviously tied to this bullet, such that maybe it's a demon. Maybe it's an object of power that has its own consciousness. Maybe any number of things. Maybe Mother Gun is an alias for whoever shot your friend and put the bullet in there in the first place. I cannot be certain. But I can say that all of these coincidences, they seem to kind of pool around the four of you, such that the Telemeric Court has asked me to keep an eye on you.
But we're not to know the full extent of the information.
It's not mine to give.
Gav, we can use all the help we can get. We are so incredibly out of our depth.
And I'm not. I barely understand why it is that any of this is being asked of any of us.
It's too late to leave.
Oh, even if I wanted to, there is nowhere for me to go.
That's kind of my point. Where Maurice looks to Alinea, where should we go?
I believe that you are safe for the time being. This conspiracy, this stratagem, gambit, whatever you want to call it, it was fairly elaborate. And I think that Marlo had planned it for some time.
We lost you.
I believe, sorry. I believe that Marlo had planned it for some time. But
you keep saying that he's planned something, but for what purpose? If he cannot even understand how to decipher this book, what threat do you feel he is posing? Who is he working for?
that is the question we tried to answer by asking of your affiliations. We believe that there are some organizations that have a good measure of interest in the book. The Court of Nos, the this fellow Jaren the Devoured.
Gav has suddenly sits up straighter, but doesn't say anything.
I'd like you to make a stealth roll. Or, yeah, let's call it like a, let's call it deception.
Yeah, okay. What can I put into that?
You can put a bene, or you can use,
Well, what
you can
kind?
use sortilege.
Interaction or like.
Yeah, that would be interaction.
All right, I'm gonna use my entire one whole point of interaction for that.
Mm-hmm. Or you can use sortilege to double your chances.
What's the challenge rating?
6.
Yeah, I'm gonna add a sortilege point as well
Okay.
to bring it down to a 4. That's what it does, right?
Sortilege, you roll 2 dice. You're basically forcing
Oh,
magic into.
I'm giving myself advantage.
Yeah, actually.
Okay, so 5.
Okay.
Hell yeah. 7 on the highest dice.
Yeah, I think that at that point, like her eye kind of flicks your way, but then kind of like returns back to meet everybody else is kind of like collective gaze, especially focusing on Kyrrie.
Do we notice Gav sit up straight, or is the deception roll all applied to us?
If any of you guys would like to figure that out,
Go for it.
yeah, let's.
I'm inscrutable.
I cannot be screwed.
All right, so that's what, a perception?
Yeah, that would be
Alright.
perception for you
I'm gonna
guys.
die a little bit if I roll another 9.
So what is the challenge rating?
Let's say for Gav, what's actually no, it meets the highest rating.
You're
So
sad.
yeah, you rolled a 7 deception.
I rolled a 7.
Yeah,
Okay, so we would technically have to beat 7 also.
yeah, and let's say
7 or above, I think.
let's add. You guys can use sense motive.
Oh,
Okay.
well that.
Okay.
Gavriel, she who
Yeah.
will not be screwed.
Yeah.
And we screwed her.
I challenge thee, and I roll a 5 with
Hey.
+2 to sense motive.
Oh no.
I
Yeah.
got a
You
7.
have been screwed twice over.
I got a 3.
Oh no! What hath I wrought? Yeah, and I think you know what it is I think Twig. I think you having more of like kind of like a common wavelength between the two of you.
You
You
would
being
actually know immediately why I did that with me in the room.
yeah, exactly.
I know, but I that was to notice that you noticed.
Yeah.
Wait,
That I noticed
But
that
I know that you know that I know that you know.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
so now we both know.
I got a 7.
You got a
What
7?
happens with a 7?
A 7?
Yeah.
You pushed. You also
Yeah, you
notice.
got it.
Okay.
All right.
Isn't it like kind of like armor class and like D&D? Like
Yeah.
if you roll the number, you do actually hit.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
Yeah.
that's how I've adjudicated it. So yeah,
Until
so,
until somebody else streams Invisible Sun, then what we say is the law.
Zach was making up like 80% of it as he went. It was crazy.
I hate to break it to you all, but I do think there's another stream that's this game.
Those
There
bastards.
are.
We should find them and we should fight them.
Mhm.
No, they're so nice.
No, we should
Are
kill
they?
them.
All right, all
We
right.
should find them and we should fight them with pastries.
That would be
good
Twig.
intentions.
Pies at dawn.
Instead of bricks, you will throw good intentions and pastries in their face.
If I deflect long enough, you'll forget what you rolled.
So
Amazing. Well, I think, and this might be telling to Gav, Kyrrie looks at Alinea briefly. It's like there's a flicker, like a moment of, because remember, Kyrrie was just asked in front of the people that she holds of highest esteem in her entire organization if she knew who this devourer guy was. And she truthfully said she didn't.
Mhm.
But she's just noticed that someone in the room might have information about that.
What do you
However,
do? Mm-hmm.
she does not say anything.
Yep.
Interesting. Okay. All right, and then at that point she says, "Yeah, this Jaren the Devoured, the Vespertine. These are agents, organizations, people, representatives of the underworld. There are many people that would be interested in such an object of power. If not for to unlock its power, then to probably, dare I say, use it for raw parts to make their own objects of power. This is a precious item, and I appreciate that you treat it with the seriousness that it deserves and the care that it deserves, speaking from one librarian to another.
As a member of the Veshtaad, you know that there is no better care kind than a librarian, and I can make an oath to you, an unbreakable oath, that I will protect it with my life.
Good. Well, I have but maybe one last message, and Kyrrie, it is for you. I allow you to read it in your own time. It's been delivered to you by Master Jaro, Magus Jaro, and she hands you a letter.
All right. I open it.
Okay.
Do I recognize the letter or anything about it?
You don't necessarily recognize the letter. It is very much, there is a decorative script, however. And you realize it's actually handwritten with fountain pen. And typewritten with that same kind of flourish on a signature. The contents of the letter essentially dictate to you, on behalf of the Telemeric Court, I hereby recognize your efforts to defend the sacred knowledge of the Order of the Vance, and I have also taken great care to read your recent scholarship studies of 1 or 7 wolves. And I hereby request a reading of your and defense of your work to explore the advancement of your rank from postulant to velator.
Ooh.
Hereby signed, Emil Jaro, with a flourish.
Well.
Emil. I don't know if you can trust an Emil. Apologize to all our viewers named Emil.
Kyrrie is just flooded with happiness and joy and relief almost that she's been given and recognized, not only institutionally, which she has always valued, but that this book means something, not only to her, which it did in the moment she acquired it, that her stewardship of this book will make a difference, and it will be something important, the service that she will provide to it, that her librarianship is no longer just a day-to-day rote task of collecting material and getting it to people who need it, but it really is about the protection of the availability and security of this particular book. And I think she's just very honored that the Telemeric Court would have recognized her in this way. And so she looks up at Alinea and thank you. Please tell Jaro thank you.
And she looks at you and says, you should tell him yourself when you get the next opportunity. As to the rest of you, I just ask that all of you be safe, that we hope that you do not think of the Order of the Vance as rivals or this inscrutable organization. We really do believe in the value of scholarship, of the value of our own work and of the work of our orders, of the constituents of our order. And we ask that if you should have any concerns or any more information leading to the discovery of this conspiracy, that we would return to us.
Just return? What if we need your assistance right away? How can we contact you?
There are spells for that.
I want a guarantee.
This sounds an awful lot like a retainer, too.
And I think at that point, she says, Kyrrie, if you knock on my door, I will always hear it.
Kyrrie nods.
Whether or not I will be able to answer it is an entirely different question.
Understood.
And so I thank you again for all of your time and your patience. And I ask you to be safe, in particular with your guardianship of the book. And once again, if you need assistance, knock on my door.
Very
Thank you,
well.
Alinea.
Thank you.
And she opens the door and kind of ushers you out.
Is Allegra still in the hallway, or is it just Peresaad?
No, you have a feeling that if anybody is having additional questioning, it's probably Allegra.
Maurice looks at each of you, says, "We should get going. Follow
I
me."
agree.
And he walks briskly in the wrong direction at first until Kyrrie says, "Actually, it's this way."
And at which point, when you turn to go the right direction, Duncan's looking up at you and goes, "Oof!"
Right, this way.
But Kyrrie says, "But wait, where are you going? Where should we go?"
And actually, if we have time before the stream, are we going to?
I think
Yeah.
let's give it 5-10 more minutes.
So Maurice would like to spend a point of hidden knowledge to find a Hindasa safe house.
All right.
The opposite direction, toward from home, and finds. Let's see. I'm missing the map to Fartown. There's no body of water or anything like that. It's just.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of anything in Fartown. No, Fartown's fairly fairly well developed. So
there's
if you wanted a body of water or even some like wilderness, there probably might be some place. And I'll give this to you for free, because you are a member of the Hindasa and you're a stalwart. You would know that there would probably be a safe house somewhere in the Topiary district.
Outside of Fartown.
Outside of Fartown, yes.
Oh, fantastic. So, and the best way to get there is through that gate, right?
That is what I will actually say you would need to roll for, because there are many gates out of Fartown. There's one central gate, but it's kind of like the Celestial Bazaar. You could probably find a shortcut.
Right.
So give me if you spend a hidden knowledge, give me a roll challenge rating 6.
And I can pump this with intellect.
Absolutely.
And I'm gonna do a sortilege as well.
Okay. I'll allow it.
Just really want this to work. So I'm rolling. What's my target?
So it is 6 originally, but with your venture, I believe it makes it a 4, right? Or is it a 5?
A 5, and I'm rolling twice. Okay.
Yeah, there you go. What'd you do?
2 successes, 8 and 5.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, so you know that there is a special door in one kind of back alley in Fartown just really kind of a little bit middle of the way past this one edifice. And if you knock,
It's actually literally like a Oscar the Grouch style trash can.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So you see Maurice open the lid and like look back at you guys like, yeah, this is it. And he just gets in and kind of like slides down, and Duncan, who's a little bit short for the garbage can, kind of pops up and like can't quite get it and is looking to one of you three.
I give Duncan a boost.
Aw.
oh, is it
Soft spot for
Maurice
dogs.
the Grouch? I love this. Yeah. Yeah. So you guys follow suit?
Yeah, I'll just jump right in.
I take a look. I go in last, I'm going to say, because I want to look to make sure no one is watching.
I think Kyrrie sort of gingerly like steps into it like 1 foot and then just sort of like picks up her other foot, like kind of looking like this is very disgusting and I don't know how I feel about that, and just sort of sinks into it.
Okay. So why don't you, Gav, give me a perception? And this is going to be, I'm not going to set a challenge rating. I'm just going to say that depending on what you roll, you will get different information.
3.
Okay. On a 3, you do sense a couple of late night carousers, probably a couple of more Vance students post demonstration who are eagerly celebrating the end of exams. You do not see the same student with the Ioun cones, but that's all you kind of see. It does feel a little bit quiet as you step into the can.
Yeah. With like great suspicion, I try to hop on in pretty fast and slam that
And
lid shut.
And as you go through, the camera pans out as the lid seems to spin in the air and replace itself on top of the can. And we pan further and further out into the middle of the late night, early morning of the indigo sun in Satyrine, as the mystical kind of mist wafts off of the streets as the kind of moisture of the day rises into the sun, almost a portent in the midst of things to come. And that's where we'll leave it here tonight. So everybody award yourselves 1 acumen. We'll cover joy and despair later post stream. Guys, thanks so much for joining us. If you are still watching in chat, thank you guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, we will be resuming normal streaming schedule every other Sunday, starting at the 28th, or is it the 29th? 29th.
29th.
We will also be streaming at 4:30 EST, Eastern Standard Time, per normal. You guys, thanks so much. It's going to get really exciting as we kind of figure out just how deep the hole in the world goes.
Dear God, what is it?
Oh boy. Oh boy.
All right, guys, thanks so much. Good night.
Bye.
Title card.